Hello, my name is Brian Duffy, and today I will be talking about Lawrence Kohlberg's stages of moral development. Kohlberg's work is based on John Piaget's work, someone that influenced him quite heavily when he was at the University of Chicago in the early 1900s, around the 1940s, from what I remember. Anyways, Kohlberg's stages of moral development are based on Piaget's two stages. Piaget's two stages had younger children, and their moral thinking was focused on the regarding rules as fixed and as absolute. And the older children, had a more relativistic understanding of rules and of all the different understandings of those rules. Now, he uncovered 6 stages from the 2 that Piaget began with, based on his work with the surveys he would give. Now, these surveys comprise a set of several dilemmas he would give to 72 boys, which was his core sample in the 1950s. The boys were from middle and lower class families in Chicago. They were ages 10, 13, and 16. He would later add in some younger boys eventually, and some boys and girls from other American cities, but his core sample at first was ages 10, 13, and 16 from middle and lower class families. He would give them a set of dilemmas, and a basic interview would include a dilemma like the following. This one is called Heinz Seals the Drug. In Europe, a woman was near death from a special kind of cancer. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to make. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later. But the druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug and I'm going to make money from it." So Heinz got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Now, should the husband have done that? These are the type of dilemmas that Kohlberg would ask his subjects, and he would also record the passages of the passages and the responses from from the students, and would have independent people independently score a sample of responses, and eventually he would calculate the degree to which they all agreed, all the raters of the responses agreed, and that way he was making sure that he was consistent with his analysis of the students' responses, and that he could have pretty solid backing and solid evidence for his stages of moral development. Now let's go through the stages, Kohlberg's 6 stages. They come in 3 levels. The 3 levels are pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional moral reasoning. Pre-conventional moral reasoning is when you're thinking of yourself as an individual or as an egoistic self. Conventional is when you're thinking of yourself as part of a community, and then as a part of a social network, as part of a society as a whole. Then you have post-conventional, which is thinking in a more theoretical or philosophical manner of society and what are the undergirding philosophies of your society. Let's start with the first one. The first one is the obedience and punishment orientation. Kohlberg's stage 1 is similar to Piaget's in that the child assumes the powerful authorities hand down a fixed set of rules which he or she must unquestionably obey. They're concerned about if they're going to be punished or not based on following those fixed set of rules and agendas. Now, stage 2 is pretty soon after that, because stage 1 you just have that simple obedience and punishment. Stage 2 is known as the individualism and exchange stage. At this stage, the child has recognized that there's not just one right view that's handed down by the authorities. They've gotten to the point where they're pursuing individual interest, and they're free to pursue these interests to their own, at their own risk, is what I'm trying to say, their own risk. Children at stage 1 think of punishment as a problem with wrongness. Stage 2, children think of punishment only in light of risk, and that risk is really something that you have to take in order to gain the freedom of pursuing your individualism. Now, like I said before, they focus on the individual and the egoist part of ourselves. It is pre-conventional. Both stages, stage 1 and 2, illustrate this. I like to think of stage 2 as the shopping mentality. It's also a deal-making stage. It's kind of like, I do this for you, you will do this for me type of mentality. That's kind of what I consider the American shopping mentality, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a way of thinking or a way of reasoning that we use pretty commonly. Moving on to the conventional level, which is the thinking of yourself as part of a community, or thinking of yourself as part of a society as a whole, we have stage 3, which is the good boy, good girl stage. In this way, at this stage, the children, or even adults eventually, believe that people should live up to the expectations of the family and the community and what their definition of a good boy, good girl is. Now, at this point, they're concerned more about intentions and not so much about just following the rules of the road. You follow these rules, if you don't, you're punished. They're looking for, how does a good boy act in this case? How does a good girl act in this case? The best example I can consider when we're talking about stage 3 is the political parties. They have definitions, or at least we think they have definitions, of what a good Republican, or a good Democrat, or a good independent, perhaps a good conservative and a good liberal, if you want to be a little more broad in your definition of political parties. They have these definitions that kind of follow stage 3 moral reasoning or moral thinking. And of course, political parties are also focused on moral issues that we deal with every day, or at least at key points of our life. That's stage 3, good boy, good girl. Stage 4, which is the last one of conventional morality, moral reasoning. Stage 4 is the maintaining law and order stage, otherwise known as maintaining the social order. At this stage, we've moved on to reasoning and thinking of ourselves as part of a society as a whole, and not so much as just a community group or like a political group. Where the emphasis is on obeying laws, respecting authority, and performing one's duties so that the social order is maintained. The question that they really ask at stage 4, or at least the one that comes up consistently at stage 4, is the what if question. I like to think of the Nazi dilemma, the Nazi and hiding Jewish people dilemma, as a good example of this. There's a riddle, I'm sure you may have heard of this before, that if you were hiding Jewish people during the 1940s in Germany, and the Nazis came and knocked on your door and asked if you were hiding any Jewish people, what would your response be? Would you say, yes, there are Jewish people here, and you would let the Nazis go in and do their thing? Or, obviously a terrible thing, or would you lie and say, no, there are no Jewish people here, even though you know that you are lying to them face to face? These are also people that you know and probably even are friendly with. What would you do? Well, at stage 4, for a maintaining of the social order, would it be best for us to lie about it, or to tell the truth about it? Well, lying is something we don't want to be endemic throughout our society, so perhaps telling the truth is the way to go. But of course there are problems that specific riddle will bring up. But is it also a good example of stage 4 thinking, and at least at its very base level? Moving on to, Moving on to stage 5, it is the social contract and individual rights stage. It is also the part where we get to post-conventional morality. We're getting more into theoretical and philosophical thinking, based in probably a better understanding of what is actually undergirding our society. Now, the social contract and individual rights stage is the point where people ask, what makes for a good society? Okay, what makes for a good society? Kind of like earlier we saw stage 3 is the good boy, good girl. What makes a good boy, a good girl? Now we're looking at what makes a good society. So they're considering the rights and values that a society ought to uphold. This is kind of the Socrates principle, as far as I can see. They believe 2 things should really be key here. They believe that first, we should all want certain basic rights, such as liberty and life, and second, we should have democratic processes in place in order to fix laws, or in order to improve our society as we need to as we progress throughout the years. Now, moral law may sometimes supersede the actual civil law or societal law, depending on if it goes over individual rights. I like to think of stage 5 thinking as the quintessential American thing, or at least what we had at the founding, and we even have a little bit of now, that individual rights and minority rights matter. These rights matter, that we should use democratic processes to change laws, or at least to move our society forward, and not just keep ourselves stuck in one space. But of course, stage 5 subjects will only say the morality rights take priority over particular laws. Do not throw the whole complete government out. That will be anarchy. And that is not something that would maintain the social order, which would be something that's still concerning stage 4 thinkers. And most of these stages of moral reasoning have built off of each other on purpose, because they're moving up from disordered society, focused on just the individual, all the way to a very ordered society, very well-run and very good society. Then we're going to move on to stage 6. Stage 6 is the universal principles, or the principled conscience stage. Stage 6, moral reasoning, is when a student, or an adult possibly at this point, defines the principles by which we achieve justice. Now, Kohlberg, when he was thinking of justice, he was thinking of Rawls and Kant and their understanding of justice, and of course great moral leaders like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. The principles of justice require us to treat the claims of all parties in an impartial manner, respecting the basic dignity of all people as individuals, basically giving everyone their fair shake or fair trial. Now, the principles of justice are universal because of this applicability to everyone. Everyone, no matter what race, no matter what gender,